Just wait for Paul. Ladies and gentlemen, councillors, will you please stand for the Chairman of West Northamptonshire Council, the Vice Chairman of West Northamptonshire Council, and the Chief Executive of West Northamptonshire Council. Thank you.
Please be seated. Thank you. I will now ask for apologies. The Democratic Services Manager will announce them.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies are received from Councillors Anne Addison, Rebecca Breeze, Janice Duffy, Penny Flavel, Andre Gonzalez de Savage, Jamie Lane, Malcolm Longley, Charles Manners, Peter Matten, Ken Pritchard, Emma Roberts, Lisa Samiotis, Richard Salisbury-Timms, Laura Stevenson, Danielle Stone, Paul Joyce, Catherine Russell and Terry Guilford.
Thank you. Are there any other apologies? No. Item 2, declarations of interest from members and officers. Do we have any? No. Item 3, Chairman's announcements. It is my sad duty to advise you that former Northampton County Councillor Stephen Legg passed away last month. Stephen became a councillor for Northamptonshire County Council in 2009, representing the Western Division for the Conservative Party before being re-elected 4 years later as a councillor for the Riverside Park Division, where he served until the County Council was abolished in 2021. In 2019, he served as the County Council's chairman during a year heavily impacted by the pandemic. Despite the challenges, he used his role to champion his chosen charities, Northamptonshire Young Carers and the Northants 50+ network. During his time as County Councillor, he also chaired the Personnel Committee, Council Consultation and Negotiation Forum and Children's Overview and Scrutiny Committee, as well as being a dedicated member of the Pensions Committee and the Audit Committee. Born in Northampton, Stephen studied engineering at Nottingham University before embarking on a career in education as a teacher at Northampton College. He later joined the family event management business, contributing to major events at iconic venues such as Silverstone. Before I ask you all to stand and acknowledge his passing by way of a minute's clapping, is there anybody who would like to offer any words? Councillor Golby.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I hadn't prepared anything, but I'll just take this opportunity to add my thoughts on the passing of Stephen, who was a good friend and a good colleague back in the County Council days. And he was a big chap, a big personality, very charismatic, very calm and collected, and always somebody that would give you a very calm and considered opinion on what was going on, whether it's, for better or for worse. I attended Stephen's funeral earlier this week, along with a couple of colleagues, and as it's always the case at funerals, you get to hear much more about the life of a person that has unfortunately passed and what they contributed and their careers and what their achievements were. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to remember Stephen and offer my condolences to his family. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps we can all stand and applaud him for a minute. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I did want to say a few words.
Okay, Dennis.
Could I speak? Thank you. My sympathies go to Stephen. I worked with Stephen for 8 years on the planning for the old county council. He was a very knowledgeable man. He knew about the planning and that we went. And we used to travel to the planning on the development control by coach, which we had quite a bit of banter. And we had some really good times then. I become quite friendly with him, and we visited lots of different planning places which we went, and he thoroughly used to enjoy that because it was cross-party meeting and there was no politics mentioned, and we used to go and have lunch together as a committee, and had I think Matt was also there when we went, so I remember him with fondness, and I was really quite sad when I heard about his death, and I know from my group they would like to give their condolences to his family. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. I've also been asked to remind you, and you have a piece of paper on your desks, that there's a budget scrutiny, corporate overview and scrutiny committee is holding a budget scrutiny session on the 16th of January at 5 p.m, which will be a remote meeting and will split into 4 breakout rooms to consider and provide scrutiny challenge. The breakout details are listed on the piece of paper. May I ask councillors who have not already notified of their interest to join this meeting to contact Tracy Tiff, who will then ensure you have the relevant paperwork and link to the meeting. Thank you. If we now go to item 4, devolution options for West Northamptonshire. Jean Lineker has asked to address the council in relation to this item. Noted, thank you. Mrs. Lineker?
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Chair.
You have 3 minutes to speak, Mrs. Lineker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm very sceptical about this devolution. I know what it's about, but I hold being sceptical because there have been so many changes. I'm astounded that the mayoral thing that is going to be discussed will be discussed on the I want to keep the town mayor, but I don't want the other part of it. I understand what's going on with devolution, but we've had so many changes within this council. Stephen Legg was a good councillor, I will say that. He had diabetes, like me, and he was on insulin, like me. Now, I was an old borough councillor, and things did work well within planning. Dennis was right, and I want this committee and this town to deal with planning and everything else like it used to. Housing appeals, you don't have them anymore. We used to do the housing appeals. Housing doesn't come up on scrutiny anymore. You're very bad, both of you, dealing with scrutiny, and I'd like to see that changed. It needs changing, because no mention of the children. The children's in a trust, which I did not like, and neither. Mick Scrimshaw was a good councillor on that scrutiny panel. Sadly, we lost him. But it ought to be done equally on all parties. I like the idea, you haven't got much choice, I was told that, of doing this. But I'm very sceptical about change, and so will older people be. As long as we get some extra money, I don't mind. But I don't think that will come about. It's not to do with money, it's to do with power. And I want the power staying here, okay? That's all I need to say. And Stephen Legg and many others, old councillors, were good. Even Tim Hagland was good. Borough, contractors. That's all we have is contractors. Why can't we have in a house as a council? People moan about potholes. People moan about things, but they never come here to discuss anything. You need to involve the people. People matter to me, okay? Sorry, that's me.
Thank you, Mrs. Lineker. I now invite Councillor Brown to propose and Councillor Harris to second that Standing Order 29.5 be suspended to allow councillors more time to speak on this subject matter tonight.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, under 15.1 of the Constitution, I move that Procedure Rule 29.5 be suspended in order to allow speech times to be extended to 10 minutes for the proposer and 5 minutes for all other speeches.
Is that seconded by Councillor Harris?
Very happy to second. Thank you. This is such an important issue for all of us to understand and get our heads around. I think it's really important that we suspend that standing order and have time to give it due discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. We will go to the vote. Okay. That is passed. So I will allow 10 minutes for the proposal and 5 minutes for all other speeches. I will invite Councillor Adam Brown to introduce the report and move the proposal.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, there's a lot of detail in the report, and I've shared a lot of detail with my group and with opposition groups. So hopefully councillors have had the opportunity over the last few weeks since the release of the white paper to get their head around the issues in front of us to a greater or lesser extent. But let me say that seldom do we find ourselves confronted with real opportunity in local government. We may handle important services, large budgets, and take responsibility for hundreds of thousands of residents. But watershed moments are few and far between. This is such a moment. The government is clear. Devolution is the default. And in time, all of England's forthcoming combined authorities will have an elected mayor. So the question for us today isn't if, but when, and whether we are willing to maximise the opportunities of being an early adopter of devolved government in England. Membership of the Devolution Priority Programme means being part of the first wave of new mayoral strategic authorities, with elections in May 2026, election of the mayor, that is. It also means a government-led consultation commencing this month and finishing in early April to establish what local residents' priorities would be for the new strategic authority. Furthermore, getting on board now will allow us to exert greater influence over the governance arrangements of our new geography, gain extra transitional funding from government, and have one of a small number of English mayors setting the pace and competing for funding and investment. If we pass up those opportunities today, they may not present themselves again. Not joining the Devolution Priority Programme for a mayoral strategic authority would mean a foundation combined authority on a geography as yet unknown, which brings fewer powers, no investment pot, and still sets us on a path to a future mayoralty, but, excuse the pun, very much after the Lord Mayor's show of the initial wave of mayoralties are established. That is a risk in itself, because if you read the white paper and other documents, you will see that planning changes and other reforms are being brought forward regardless of whether you have strategic authority status. Now, I would invite every member here to think not of themselves or their party, but of what this means in a tangible sense for residents. And that means putting aside the question of who the mayor may be. The mayor, after all, is merely the vehicle for delivering the devolved powers, so we must focus on what we stand to gain from Whitehall. More control over local economic strategies, which can lead to tailored initiatives that drive growth and create jobs. Greater powers over transport to deliver transport systems that better meet the needs of local communities. Representation around the table when strategic housing is being discussed that will impact upon our area. Enhanced control over skills and employment programmes to tailor these initiatives to the specific needs of our region, helping to reduce unemployment and improve workforce skills. Integrated funding to plan and deliver infrastructure projects more efficiently, supporting long-term regional development. These represent a significant transfer of decision-making powers from the heart of government to the regions. And while I know that some would prefer those powers to come straight to us, and I count myself among those, and others would rather avoid further change altogether, we must not overlook the benefits that will come to our residents, and neither should we fixate on the potential of others to get a slightly larger cut of the pie. West Northamptonshire is the largest authority in the South Midlands. It is significant in both our population and our economy, and not only would we hold our own in any combined authority, we can pack a punch. Allow me now to indulge in a bit of myth-busting. This is not a reconfiguration of our own council. This does not mean that decisions around our council's budget, social care services, highway repairs, or local planning applications will be removed from us. The mayor would hold defined strategic powers to devolve from central government, not taken from us. This is not a highly expensive additional layer of bureaucracy. Ben Houchen, the mayor in the Tees Valley, does not charge a precept whatsoever. Andy Burnham in Greater Manchester levies one of just £20 per annum. This is not a change that we can resist in perpetuity. I repeat what I said at the start, that the government's direction of travel is clear, and this will happen. The question is when and how we make the best of it. I also wish to acknowledge the counter-proposals put forward by leaders in Milton Keynes and Luton. I had hoped, and hold out hope, that we could sign a letter from all 6 leaders in the South Midlands confirming that the South Midlands wishes to join the Devolution Priority Programme as a single, united geography, and talks are ongoing to try and make that happen. Ministers agree that we are a sensible geography. We have many economic ties and commonalities across various transport modes. The South Midlands would bring together a key stretch of the M1 corridor, unite Motorsport Valley, and consolidate an economic region that has strengths across education, finance, industrial logistics, and engineering, to name but a few. It is therefore greatly disappointing that some of my fellow leaders look at the 2 large Northamptonshire authorities and see places they don't wish to work with. Let me be very clear, though. I look south, and despite political differences, I see places that have much in common with us and that I am eager to work with. There is no more natural geography for West Northamptonshire than the South Midlands, and I will do all I can to work past what was said yesterday and seek the best outcome for West Northamptonshire, and I know that the other half of our county is equally committed. We are also committed to delivering the best for the South Midlands as a whole. It is in nobody's interest to embark on a fool's errand of seeking to apply for a combined authority that doesn't meet the government's statutory tests, offers a smaller geographical footprint, a smaller population, and a smaller economy. Northamptonshire combined is 40% of the South Midlands population and accounts for 41% into accepting mediocrity. Chairman, I have mentioned the singular direction of travel set out by government, and I will do so again as I wrap up. It would do none of us any good to take a Carnot-like approach to these proposals and stand at the water's edge commanding the tide not to come in. That tide is early, be one of few, the exception to the rule grabbing headlines and attention. More money, more government support, and more on the table for residents. And it is those residents who we should continue to bear in mind as we debate this matter this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I invite Councillor Matt Golby to second the proposal.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm very happy to second, but I'll reserve my right to speak, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the Council who wish to comment on this item? I call on Councillor Councillor Jonathan Harris first.
Thank you, Chair. It may be a question of not if, but when. But nonetheless, it's important that people see the irony of a government telling us that the time has come for central government to let go of powers, whether we like it or not, and if you don't, you'll get it anyway. There's definitely an irony there. Also, it was interesting to hear Councillor Brown use the phrase, ministers agree that we have a sensible geography. Of course they would, but ministers aren't local in our geography. So as someone with a fundamental belief in localism, I of course acknowledge that devolution is a related concept. Are there merits in collaborating regionally on issues? Of course there are. Does it need to have a directly elected mayor to make this happen? No, it doesn't. The assumption that devolution will automatically improve the lives of people and neighbourhoods is misguided. Labour appear to be following their Conservative predecessors in wanting to replace democratic local government within reach of the people for whom it serves with strong mayors subject to limited democratic scrutiny whilst in office, who will more than likely implement centrally funded strategies more than likely within tight national guidelines. This is not fiscal devolution. There may be a role for this approach in certain areas, for instance, metropolitan areas, where we have core central cities with strong connections and dependencies within a large radius, and of course there is an argument for regions to collaborate on interconnected issues. But this does not need a mayor for this to be effective. The proposed South Midlands region has no real core synergies or commonality, despite what ministers might think, other than maybe the M1 motorway, but that's it. What's more, West Northants currently has the highest population of the 6, and the recently published economic growth strategy seems to show this to be the case to 2043 and beyond. Bedford is around 185,000 residents. We have over 400,000. Yet it would appear that we get the same representation and one vote, despite having a higher population. The bottom line is that this is being rushed through. The carrot being the cash, the stick being, we'll do it anyway. I think we're kidding ourselves if we think that this is just an expression of interest. And I think it's clear from the leader this evening that that isn't the case, that this will happen. I haven't heard any people in my area calling for a regional mayor. Who has? Most people are genuinely still struggling to see the benefits of the creation of a unitary council, which promised less silos, more joined-up thinking, and an easier way of getting things done. Now, whilst there may have been progress, things for many have got harder to gain access. Just ask parish councils. We're following a path where potentially England could end up with fewer elected representatives per head of population and fewer levels of government than any other advanced democracy. Furthermore, this approach is rightly being seen by many as a potential power grab. It risks centralising power in the hands of fewer people. The powers to override the decisions of the authorities they are supposed to represent, specifically planning as an example. Those who support directly elected mayors say there must be individual leadership rather than collegial team leadership. However, surely the advantage of collective leadership is it enables exploration of policy from different perspectives. In a time when we see a society that is fragmenting, I would argue that it is imperative that we look for ways to pull people together, explore all views and find common ground rather than rely on a figurehead to tell us what to do. Do we really need or want more of the cult of personality at a time like this? Look where it's got us. A directly elected mayor cannot cover all of the functions of the local authority. They have to rely on unaccountable, often unelected personal assistants holding similar political views. And the risk is that power slips to those unelected full-time chief officials. To some extent, we've seen this in the role of the PFCC. Even if where a cabinet is formed, if it is formed, the executive powers stay with the mayor. And that cabinet will be formed from the leaders of each of those component authorities. These leaders, in my view, will, or should be at least, fully occupied with their own authorities within their own cabinets. And I think it would be naive to expect that they will have the time or the bandwidth to check much of the role of the directly elected mayor.
Councillor Harris, can I ask you to sum up now, please?
As Liberal Democrats, our vision for devolution is clear, a system that enables local authorities and any other bodies to work in partnership and at a scale that represents the local communities that they represent. This doesn't do that. On that basis, we can't support this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
I call on Councillor William Barter.
Thank you. I'd like to pick up on the couple of mentions of railways in the table of devolved powers and say that I think this proposal is going to be good for rail services for West North Ants, especially the statutory role in planning and development that comes with the mayoral authority. OK, fine, rail within West North Ants is not a big deal, but it is important for travel within the South Midlands and between West North Ants and London and the West Midlands and the North. The problems are we're largely served, Northampton accepted, by stations that lie outside the dotted line on the map that represents our council area. So Milton Keynes and Wellingborough spring to mind. So we have no formal or even acknowledged say in what happens to services at those stations. Moreover, services levels and patterns are largely driven by London and national constraints rather than by our own needs. So I think the mayoral statutory role would be very positive, certainly in the longish term, when you look at our draft local transport plan, where we've got proposals for or options to examine for new stations and line reopenings, such as the line to Bedford. To make the best case for these, we need to capture the full benefits, and that includes cross-boundary benefits. And we need to access greater funding than West North Ants alone could contemplate. We need more financial clout behind us to reap these things. Something that is imminent, if not overdue, is redesign of West Coast Main Line services around more local needs after implementation of HS2. Now, I accept that the opportunities have been limited by the previous government's ill-advised, and that's exactly what I mean, decisions, but they still exist, though now they're going to have to be worked for, possibly in competition with other regions. So I think it's particularly important to be able to speak with one strong voice, especially with Milton Keynes in this shortish term. It's acknowledged widely, I think, that transport is fundamental to the economy. The South Midlands is a logical economic area based on 2 rail main lines and the M1, and I think early adoption of this devolution gives us the opportunity to have a strong voice across traditional boundaries and even arbitrary boundaries to get the best for West North Ants. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barter. I invite Councillor Wendy Randall to speak. Councillor Barter, have you switched your microphone off?
Thank you, Chair. The devolution programme being rolled out by the Labour government is the best opportunity in 50 years to give local people more power in their communities. Strategic authorities would not only mean the end of Whitehall micromanagement, slowing down important decisions, they will also bring with them much better funding and investment opportunities. Both myself and my group agree that joining the priority programme gives us a great chance to use government support and extra funding to get devolution right in a timely and efficient way. But we shouldn't run headfirst into this negotiation without understanding the scale of this undertaking and the significant work this administration will have to put in to make a success of working with our potential partners. We all need to admit that besides CENLEP, the idea of the South Midlands is a relatively new one with few shared bodies and services. For decades, Northamptonshire has looked to the East Midlands. We come under East Midlands Ambulance Service. Our hospital trusts are twinned with Leicester Hospital, and in the past we have shared fostering and children's services with other East Midland authorities. Our PFCC, who cannot be here tonight, told me that Northamptonshire Police pays into the East Midlands organisations where forces share resources like forensic and databases, and that this would be extremely difficult to remove ourselves from. There is also the issue of the PFCC and ambulance areas not aligning in the proposed combined area, with Milton Keynes' membership of Thames Valley Police, meaning we would have a 2 and a bit police forces. Meanwhile, whilst Beds, Milton Keynes and Luton share an ambulance service, Northants and us use a different one. So we already have a number of organisations and services that would need major rearrangements and configurations to make this proposal deal work. And then we have the issue of some of our other neighbouring authorities who don't want to come in with us. It has been made clear to me that their concern in joining with us has come from an embarrassing legacy of our bankruptcy and scandals. So we're, in essence, damaged goods. But looking at this, if the council decides to enter this letter of understanding, then our administration has an enormous job to do. Not just to show our neighbours that we can be team players and learn from our past mistakes and don't represent a threat to effective strategic authority, but also to ensure that those neighbours are willing to be team players too, and that West Northants won't just be the disgruntled neighbour who everyone puts up with, but is a key partner. That scenario won't deliver the change our residents need. Just as it's important, we don't want to be left behind when planning devolution. It's important it doesn't happen once we get into it. That's why cross-party support on this is so crucial, because if we can't agree as a council, then what hope do we have negotiating with 5 other authorities? This endeavour has to be undertaken by us as a whole council, because we are all affected by this and we don't know what will happen in May. So we need to have that approach. Devolution cannot be about a political shuttlecock that we hit each other with. With that in mind, my group and I think it important that opposition leaders are given a seat and a voice around the table. That is what I'm asking the Leader of the Council to grant this evening, something I know opposition groups in many authorities are requesting. It means we can have an understanding of what is being arranged and proposed as it happens, instead of waiting for a report or a briefing, and can advise and support as needed rather than be reactionary, which is not helpful in an against-the-clock negotiation like this. I would like to reassure the Leader and Cabinet that we intend to support today's proposals, but it was important that we outlined the challenges facing us as I've just done. Optimism is key. Becoming a mayoral authority is a great opportunity to get some much-needed investment into our housing, transport and strategic services. And the Mayor would give us a single point of contact with the government to fight for our areas. But we have to get this right, and first time if we're going to use the priority programme. None of us want to come under the shadow of a ministerial directive again. but it will happen, and if we can't get on with the job and prove ourselves to our proposed partners in this. That is the scale of the job ahead of the administration, and it's one we're willing to help with. But to do that, we need the understanding of and a say in what's going on. So I ask again, please, Leader, can we have a seat around that table? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. I now invite Councillor Bob Purser to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I will try and speak without repeating points Wendy has already made, but and we welcome this devolution initiative. It's important to get these powers out of Whitehall and as close to us as we can manage. But there are some geographical issues that we face as a county just because of our geographical location. We're too far from Leicester, but we look north and south, so it's obvious that we've got to go south towards Milton Keynes. We have much in common with those areas of Bedford, Milton Keynes and Bedfordshire because of economic development, journey to work, the housing issues that we're all together with really as a result of the Prescott South Midlands proposals. But I think the issues that Wendy raised about policing, where we look towards Leicester, and healthcare, where we look towards Leicester again, both for strategic commissioning and hospitals, where we're looking both to Leicester and Birmingham, presents us with a very significant issue, particularly as we go ahead with the adult social care reforms, because they are going to be coterminous with health bodies. So I think the task is to develop the synergy with our other authorities. We've seen the real benefits that mayoral authorities have produced, particularly with Greater Manchester, but also with the East Midlands Authority. It does produce benefits. So my conclusion is that we have to make this arrangement work, and we will support the administration in doing that. And we need the right mechanism to meet round the table to discuss how this goes forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Purser. Councillor Phil Larratt.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A couple of things to address, as I feel, from my perspective. First of all, the geography. I remember the days when local authorities in Northamptonshire couldn't make a move without the approval of the Government Office of the East Midlands. A lady called Rowena Lim basically ran the East Midlands, and if you hadn't got her approval, you couldn't do anything. And being part of the East Midlands, Northamptonshire suffered. It suffered really badly because we were continually competing against Nottingham, Leicester and Derby. And I think, from my perspective, the last thing we want to do is go back to an association with the East Midlands. And I think in the South Midlands, we have found our niche. We are working with Milton Keynes, Bedford, all authorities that I know my constituents in the south of Northampton have an affinity with. Many of them work in Milton Keynes and live in Northampton. Many of them, unfortunately, jump in their car and go to Milton Keynes to shop or whatever. But they do, and I don't know what we can do to change that. So I think there's much greater affinity to the south than there definitely is to the north. I think we need to look as well, I mean, I hear what people say that we don't need a mayor, but when I look at the success that Ben Hoochan has had in Teesside in securing road infrastructure for Teesside in order to regenerate that area, the work that Andy Burnham has done in Manchester, particularly with regard to developing bus services, is absolutely worth noting and a model to look at. And similarly, Andy Street, what he's done in Birmingham, particularly with rail, reopening railway lines, reopening stations and connecting the city, is really good. And in my position here, because Northampton is served by, and Long Buckby is served by West Midlands Rail, I actually have a place on the board of the West Midlands Rail Executive, and working with the Mayor to see what the objectives can be to enhance rail services, maybe talking about Birmingham New Street, but that impacts on Northampton because it's the connectivity through there. So, you know, it's very important that we look to the south and have a mayor that can actually pick these things up and recognise the success of what mayors have done. I hear what people say about the health service, but, you know, and the geography, but we are looking at the same geography as SEMLEP that we've been part of for many years now, and I think we've done very well out of SEMLEP. You know, Northwest Relief Road, etc., and things like that, the Northampton Town. So, you know, I don't think it's something to worry about, the geography. We are where we are, Madam Chairman, and this is going to happen. And the question is, do we want to be in at the beginning, or do we want to be dragged into it later on? I personally think that if we're in it at the beginning, the government will want to make a success, and I think that will mean investment, and I would like to do everything we possibly can to ensure that our residents have access to that funding. So I'm totally behind the leader on this one in going forward with the South Midlands Authority. And I think locally there's good benefits for our residents. Bus franchising, for example, would be much more feasible for a combined authority, or the directly elected mayor. It's not feasible for individual authorities like ourselves or Milton Keynes, but it would be more feasible for a combined authority under a mayor. We could secure better infrastructure, and we know we're crying out for better infrastructure. The Northern Orbital Road, etc., are all things that we desperately need. And Councillor Barter has eloquently discussed the railway issues, but yes, in our local transport plan, we have included a new station at Daventry on the West Coast Main Line, at Weedon to serve Daventry on the West Coast Main Line. And that is probably more achievable through a combined authority. So to sum up, Madam Chairman, I think there are benefits, and we should do what we can to maximise these for the benefit of our residents and move forward on this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Larratt. I invite Councillor Jamal Al-Wahabi to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Devolution works. We have seen that in Great Manchester and North Yorkshire. We see it closer to home with the East Midlands Combined Authority. Progressive government policy will increase democratic control over large budget, services, and produce economics and efficiency of scale. Devolution will enable us to bring public transport back under democratic control. It has the potential to strengthen local economies, keep money local, and take people out of poverty. It can take on regional priorities. We support devolution. However, Northamptonshire has a problem. At present, we are part of East Midlands. This means that the regional shared services like East Midlands Health, IMSU, East Midlands Serious Organised Crime Unit, Adoption and Fostering. We're being asked to face south and become part of a new entity called South Midlands that doesn't exist and no one in Northamptonshire related to. Northamptonshire has a coterminous services: policing, health, fire and rescue, children's services. This is a great strength when it comes to multi-agency working. We are homeless because none of the authorities in our border want us. To meet the government specification in terms of population numbers, we could link this with Leicester, Leicestershire, Rutland, or Warwickshire, or Milton Keynes, Luton, Bedford, or Bedfordshire. If we do turn south, it means the mayoralty will have to work with 3 PFCCs and with 2 and a bit police force. For Northampton, that might have implication for our regional police shared services. On the issue of our neighbours is that they do not see collaborative working between our 2 unitaries. We could respect a view of our neighbours and work on our county issues around collaborative practice. We could stick it out and stand up for Northants by saying we want to have Northants combine authorities. If we do go down the South Midlands route, we will need all hands on deck to make it successful. That means the 3 PCs and the leaders of all the parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Al-Wabi. Councillor Ian McCord.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You can't pull out of the dive once you step off the board. And tonight we are being asked to step off the board. And have no doubt this is not a decision that we'll be able to revisit in a few months' time and tell Whitehall we don't wish to proceed. It's all very reminiscent of the debate that we had when we invite a local proposal for the Unitary Council that created this one. You'll give us the answer we seek, 2 unitary authorities called West and North Northants. And if you don't, well, we can arrange it. Faced with that choice, or of being done to or attempting to shape the proposal, we chose the latter. And the White Paper proudly states that the days that Whitehall knows best are over. Bravo, Madam Chairman. But a couple of paragraphs later it states, government will legislate to ensure there are mayoral authorities across England. Whitehall does indeed know better. The same tactics, government is going to do this, therefore we need to do it and shape it. The same argument put forward by Adam just a few moments back. Those who branded the unitary plan as an evil Tory plot are now taking their orders from Labour HQ, telling us how it's all wonderful. A major sensible proposal to promote growth, as the White Paper outlines. Growth has been decreed by Rachel from Customer Services. Therefore, we will have growth. And how's that going, Madam Chairman? Remember when our pound shop Margaret Thatcher had her mini-budget? 10-year gilts peaked at 3.47%. They're 4.8% right now. Rachel Reeves is turning into a pound shop Liz Truss. It's not local government reform that delivers growth, but low tax, light regulation, cheap energy and less government. And this is more government. Who has ever met a resident who decreed, we are under-governed? We want a mayor for the South Midlands. We may as well call it Sheriff of Area 52. Alas, we won't be able to do that, as this Labour government is undoing the work of its last Labour government to have alternative titles for the post of mayor. Madam Chairman, how has that local government reform gone in West Northants? And to me, it's a missed opportunity. I identified 3 great dangers. 1, signing up to all the woke nonsense. 2, being kidnapped by the green lunatics. And 3, being seen as greater Northampton Council with the needs of Northampton dominant. And this council has fallen into all 3. The lack of strategic thinking in combining services, the inability to understand what linked former district and council services, the lack of a new culture and the failure to do anything really as truly transformational and worthy of that name. But how do our residents feel? Do they feel that we've brought services closer or more remote? Do they think they are more local? Now we're being asked to endorse the establishment of a mayoral strategic authority accompanied by more local government reorganisation. The White Paper says Andy Burnham has 84% name recognition. Well, Sadiq Khan and his predecessors Boris and Ken probably did have too. But who can name the mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough? I doubt if the average citizen of Cambridgeshire can, but he charges them £38 a year and spends 13 million quid. Will there be reorganisation in Bedfordshire? The new target population is 500,000, and as Jonathan said, Bedford and Luton are under half of that, at 188 and 226,000 respectively. Central Beds at 301, almost the same size as MK at 298. But Luton and Bedford together are smaller than West North Hants. But round that table, it's 1 vote per leader. And I see nothing in the white paper that repeals the parts of the legislation that prohibits a council from sitting in 2 police force areas. So that makes 4 the minimum number you'll get to. This is important, as the powers will be over planning on a simple majority vote. And if one area disproportionately can outweigh the other, they can move development out of their area into another. And these proposals bring back regional spatial planning by the mayoral authority. Mayoral powers of compulsory purchase, infrastructure levies, mayoral development corporations will take planning away from local and put it there. Now, there may be an improvement in that. You'll go far to find worse planning departments in WNC. Another point of concern to me is the democratic one. How will that mayor be elected? The alternative vote system as proposed by Labour originally, or something different? And we also must insist on a publicly funded information leaflet to all electors at the election time. It's going to be impossible for any member from any party anywhere to get across 1.8 million people and probably the best part of 1 million letterboxes. And yes, I will make a declaration of interest in this regard. Earlier today in the day job, I was doing some planning to get 650,000 booklets for a mayoral election to be held in May. And I'm sure this will go through tonight. The administration are supporting it, and Labour, of course, are going to do as their masters in London tell them as they continue on their quest to bankrupt the country and turn it into North Korea as run by David Brent.
Sum up, please.
Absolutely, Madam Chairman. But the biggest glaring omission in the failure is to acknowledge the real problem of local government, which is care. And no amount of structural change will solve that issue. We've ducked it again, and I'll keep saying it. To fix local government, you've got to fix care. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McCord. Councillor John Shepherd.
Chairman, thank you. Chairman, 2 points. Firstly, I'm sure that even those fiercely supporting this proposition would frankly deplore the speed at which it is being put forward. The speed for us to be required to make even an initial response within this particular timescale is frankly unnecessary and unfortunate. And to have an election within 15, 16 months again is bizarre. However, a small matter of detail. Can the leader, in summing up, help us understand the distinction between the mayoral strategic authority and the mayor? We are used in existing mayoral arrangements, I think, for the mayor to have a significant degree of autonomy on a large number of matters. We see reference here to, it seems to be 6 votes around the table, 5 for the authority and 1 for the mayor probably having a casting vote. That seems to suggest less of an autonomy situation for the mayor than under existing mayoral arrangements. Interested to hear the leader whether he can clarify or not what actually is the decision-making body, whether it is a strategic authority comprising the us plus a mayor or whatever. Perhaps you can clarify that on summing up. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Mike Hallam.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a difficult one for me because I think there are both fors and againsts. So I've tried to consider all of those on this matter, which is, of course, all about devolved powers. So in terms of the negatives, those devolved powers, for me, they already exist in central government. So therefore, they're already funded by existing taxes. So what concerns me is this is simply a government ploy to introduce another layer of bureaucracy funded by taxation of hard-working residents via a mayoral precept. Now, to be balanced, in terms of the positive, I do understand that if this is being forced upon us, it will happen anyway. So therefore, it would be far better to have a seat round the table shaping this and fighting for the promise of additional investment that is being dangled. Now, if this is forced upon us, what about another way? What about making a case that it's funded differently to the mayoral precept, funded by those taxes that have already been paid to contribute to those services? Now, the people that can make that case are absolutely sat in this room, along with our Labour councillors and our Labour MPs. They need to influence their government that if they're forcing this upon us, it doesn't need to be funded by our hard-working residents. I am sceptical on this. I'm sceptical that it's yet another way of increasing taxes on hard-working residents from a Labour Party that less than a year ago promised that is exactly what they wouldn't do. And as a Conservative, a new tax is something that I'll never be keen on. My last plea tonight is that if this does go through to an expression of interest, can we all please keep within our minds our residents? I think a fundamental part of any process moving forwards needs to include consultation with our residents. We need to ask them what they think and push back to government pushing this on us and request that they too include consultation, listen to the views of our residents and seek their opinions at every potential stage of this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hallam. Councillor Julie Davenport. Councillor Davenport, I'm afraid you've touched your mic, so we'll go to Councillor Dennis Meredith next, and we'll come back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I hope Julie will be given the chance to speak anyway. I always like to hear what she has to say. I'm very, very surprised. I've come to this meeting with a very open mind, and I'm really amused that the administration is now supporting a Labour government to have devolution. That really tickles me. We've all seen in the news what the Labour government are doing at the moment. The heating allowance and the tax on the farmers and different things that they've introduced. And now they want to introduce devolution. I think it's really appalling. Mrs. Lineker, she spoke, and she spoke on behalf of the people that she knows from her, where she lives in her constituency. And I think this really sums it all up. I think we've got to listen to what the people of Northampton want. I just want to tell you this. I went to, I done a talk today, and I went to this particular, and I mentioned that it was being discussed, devolution, and that they wanted to have a mayor. And not one of them residents who was at that meeting was in favour, because they're absolutely fed up. They're fed up with the Labour government, they're fed up with this administration from the town, and they're fed up with the way the things are going. And to just go into it and say, yeah, let's show an interest that we're going to have devolution, and to supporting a government that I feel it doesn't represent working people anymore. You know, and it's just amazing. I'm amazed that the councillors on that side can actually say, yeah, let's show an interest into this. I think you should really think again, because I don't think this really is in the interest of the residents of Northampton, because that's what we should be doing. We should be listening to what the residents. So therefore, I will say this. If we are going to go down this road, we should have a general consensus to go out to the residents. It should be the residents' choices if they want devolution for Northampton. It shouldn't be left to the councillors to make this decision. It's not right. It's not right. It's the job of the residents to tell us what they want. This is one of the things why I'm a Liberal Democrat, because Liberal Democrats, we're the only party who actually listens to what residents want, and that's what we try to deliver, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Councillor Zoe Smith. Can you switch your microphone off? Oh. Can you hold... Councillor Smith, I'm afraid you pressed your microphone when you went to speak. We will come back to you. Could I ask Councillor Sally Beardsworth to speak next? But can I remind councillors, when I call them to speak, they don't need to press their microphone. Councillor Sally Beardsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Having listened to the debate tonight, and I wanted to listen to all of it because I was just a little bit surprised that I can understand the Labour group. They've got to go along with their government. It's very difficult to go against your government, so I can understand their position. But I can't really understand why the administration want to go headlong into something like this, where we just don't know much about it, and nor do the people. And we've only had 4 years of a unitary government, a council, 4 years after all that upheaval and going through and getting people to understand. And now we're talking about a regional and an elected mayor. Well, that's going to cost more money to the taxpayer. It can't do anything else because it's another layer of government. So that's more that people will have to pay out in expenses, in salaries, in pensions, and all the other bits that go with having an office of elected mayor. And it just won't be one person. He'll have an office with helpers and his buddies in there. You know what they're like. They have all their friends around them, and they do the job that they want to do. I just don't feel that that is democracy. I don't feel that being foisted onto us is right. It shouldn't be. It should be, if you want to do something, you're very welcome to join us. But if you don't, there's no going to be any penalties. And I think this business of waving the carrot, which is the extra money, in front of our noses, is rather like saying, well, you have to either do it now, or we'll use the stick later on and thrash you with it. But this isn't how government works. This isn't how people should be looked after. We're here to actually spend council tax properly on people who need it. We've got children in care, we've got adult social care, which is stretched to the absolute maximum. Councillor Councillor Ian McCord actually has said it's right. Unless we sort out social care from the cradle to the grave, we will not save this authority any money to do anything extra with. Because once all that money is gone, and it's going to get worse, we've got a rapidly ageing population. We have children that are born with autism, Asperger's, all those problems, and children are surviving all these things now. They will need looking after as well. It's going to be a real problem for the care side of things, and unless we get that sorted, it's not going to work. And one size doesn't fit all. We could be sitting with an elected mayor that belongs to one party or another and favours its own people. You know, it's very difficult to be impartial in a position like that, and we could end up with very little compared to what the others will get. And also, I've heard that a lot of the others don't want to join us. So why are we rushing headlong into something that we don't know the outcome of it is? The people don't know the outcome, and we don't know how much it's going to cost us long term. It's very irrational to do something like that. I just don't think it's sensible at all. And I agree that with Dennis Meredith, we have to listen to the people that we represent. If we don't listen to them, then we are making decisions for them rather than the democracy way of actually listening to them and actually taking that view forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beardsworth. Councillor Sam Rubens.
Thank you, Chair. I think one point to make clear to, I don't know, Dennis maybe, is that we're not whipped as a group tonight. This is a free vote for us, and we're very much all voting with our conscience. And I think I know the direction I'm going in on this, but maybe me talking it through and giving lots of people my thoughts might help me decide where I'm at. I think that the first thing to note is obviously it's no doubt the government are railroading stuff through. They are absolutely hell-bent on trying to get as many things as they can get done as possible. They're extremely unpopular. They've got all sorts of problems. They're making a lot of poor decisions, and they're hoping that the result of lots of different decisions will hopefully equal a better outcome for the country and therefore them at the next election. But that's by the by. What we need to ensure is through any process like this, we have genuine, proper consultation with residents and understand what people, I think, want from local government, what people's expectations are historically and how they might have changed. But I think critically as well, that needs to be coupled to a proper explanation of what this new change would actually mean to people. And that kind of leads on to something where Dennis mentioned about he went to a residents' meeting and everyone said that they hated the idea. I have to question how that may have been asked, because if you pose to residents and go, do you want an extra layer of local government? They will go, no, of course I don't, because it's probably going to cost me more money and what's it actually going to achieve. But if you turn around to someone and say, we're thinking of establishing something that might bring areas together, potentially levy more private investment, possibly better infrastructure and various other things, they probably would turn around and go, oh, okay, well, that actually sounds pretty good. Whether that's actually what this is, different question. Very different question. That's what I think it might be, but not sure. At the minute, I do have a question over where is our united voice to central government in being able to get stuff done regionally. I don't really think we have that. Actually, in the Tees Valley and the West Mids and all these other areas, they do now have these figureheads that are able to get stuff done for them. And there is absolutely clear evidence that some of these areas are being very successful as a result of some of these changes. That's pretty clear. Tees Valley with Ben Houchin, a great example. I think also, let's not conflate issues. So social care being mentioned, I've been one of the biggest proponents of saying that social care is the answer to sorting out local government, and it absolutely is. But let's not stop potentially something that could improve parts of what we do because of an issue with something else. Fundamentally, we need to sort social care, absolutely we do. But let's not conflate what tonight's about. Tonight is about a specific authority being established that will have certain powers, social care not being one of them. I do think something else as well. We talk about lack of commonality between areas. To be honest, there are parts of Northampton that are not at all like other parts of Northampton. There are parts of Northampton that are much more similar to parts of Bedfordshire or Luton or wherever. So I don't think that, to me, that argument doesn't really hold water. I think there is a point about maybe it's time we start thinking about ways of getting away from talking shop and becoming local government a place of more action. I think that's one of the things that's holding the country back at the moment is our inability to get stuff done, to make decisions, to build stuff, to effectively consult with residents. You know, at the moment we have this really slow process where supposedly there's loads of consultation, but actually satisfaction with local government is really low. So you're looking at the current system going, well, it's pretty rubbish, to be honest anyway, so something different might be better. You know, compare the UK to the US in terms of productivity. One of the kind of fallouts of how the system currently doesn't work. The average US citizen only has to work till August to be as productive as the average UK citizen in terms of output, in terms of wealth creation. So, and there has to be something said for our inability to actually be productive, do things, to have good infrastructure and all the other stuff. And if we're looking at ways of getting to a better position, surely reforming local government so that we can more effectively build infrastructure, levy investment, get stuff done, is part of the route to that. So a simplification. This is far from perfect, but sometimes you've got to look at things and not make perfect the enemy of the good. I think this is potentially a step in the right direction. Fundamentally, we need way bigger changes in local government and national government if we want to get to being, you know, a much wealthier and better and happy country. But in the grand scheme of things, this looks like it could maybe, possibly, or maybe not, be a step in the right direction. And so I think we've got to look at it like that. And there's one maybe final point is residents turn around to me a lot and they go, oh, you bloody councillors, you always miss opportunities, you make poor decisions time after time, year after year. And I think of ones like the whole, I'm sure people remember this from years ago, IKEA being rejected. And I just think if we reject this and turn against this now, is this one of those moments where we miss a bit of an opportunity to do better than otherwise we might? And at the end of the day, it's only an expression of interest, not legally binding.
Thank you, Councillor Rumans. Councillor Zoe Smith.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for the muscle memory. I think it would be really useful to reflect, as we talk a lot about what residents want and what residents need, to reflect on whether what we do in this chamber is really reflecting what residents want or need, or whether we indulge our own views, sometimes our own prepositions, and sometimes even our own wanting to be entertained during what can be long meetings, because actually we reflect an extremely diverse population in West Northants. We have members who are of colour, we have people who are LGBT, we have many, many, many more women than are represented in this council. We have young people, we have children, we have people with a background in care. We have a really diverse group of people and we represent them. And it is very clear to me that in this chamber we do not always respect them. We have comments made about a Chancellor of the Exchequer who is a woman from a different background that would never have been made about a man. We have comments made about the woke culture that some members applaud, which alienate vast members of the people we supposedly represent, including, for example, me as a lesbian solo mother, might be seen as very woke and very entertaining and a very ridiculous prospect, but it's my life and I'm an example of a number of people represented. We refuse to use gender-neutral language in this chamber despite its precedent in large numbers of work, because it entertains certain councillors, because people are trying to use their own obsessions, and we make comments that are really disrespectful of large numbers of the people that we represent, and we would not be allowed to do that in many of our places of work. And I think we constantly let that slip in this chamber, and we need a moment to actually reflect on conduct and to behave as professionally and respectfully to our residents and our constituents as we would expect our officers
Councillor
to.
Smith, I hear what you're saying. I'm chairing the meeting. I hope the conduct this evening, it has been very good. Is there anything else you'd like to say on the paper of devolution? Okay. Thank you, Councillor. We'll now go to Councillor Julie Davenport.
At last. Thank you, Chair. I sit before you a cynic, and I can't help that. Now, I wasn't included in any of the talks, being an aligned independent. So the only thing I have is this book from government. And I have to say, it reads to me, as I was reading it, I thought, wow, it's the answer to our dreams, apparently. Now, I've heard this so many times when we were in West Northants and previously when NCC, that we kept being told, oh, we're going to do next generation or whatever they were thinking of at the time, and everything's going to be great. But then as the years go by, you realise that the unitary hasn't improved what we had before. I mean, one example, when we had NCC, I remember getting 3 roads resurfaced and the paths. I mean, that's just a pipe dream these days because we just can't get anything done on the roads. And I find that it's even slower now because we've got such a big council, so many councillors asking officers for help that, you know, I'm constantly nagging and trying to get things done. And also, I've been looking for facts and figures. I was on YouTube and Google watching videos, and there wasn't that much on it, and it would be good to have the facts and figures, you know. Say, with the mayoralty or as a combined authority, we will get X amount of pounds more, and it will be, you can do this and you can do that. I just haven't seen that. It's like buying something and not knowing the price, the cost of it. Now, with the mayoralty, I saw they put in there that we'd get about 38 million a year, could do for 30 years. But I worked that out, and that's £19 a year per person. So I'm sure the precept will be more than that for me. So what do we gain from that 38 million? And obviously, having a mayoralty, it's going to cost millions with all the staff involved, and, which is good that there's more employment. And I don't believe there will be, as this states, that the power will be more with the people, because it will be with those at the top. And it really is a lucky dip, isn't it, as to who we get, which is very unfortunate. And Coda and I did go out and do our consultation, and we asked residents about devolution, and we didn't say much about it. We just said combining with the other authorities, and it was very negative. And we've only just had this change. And will it cost us more? Because at the end of the day, the residents don't care unless it's going to affect their pockets and their services. And they've seen what's happened with going to a unitary with services. So going to a combined authority, I am just very cynical. But residents complain that they haven't been spoken to. This, again, is being done to them. And although it's an expression of interest, we can't pull out of it, can we? So it's more than that. And the most important people of all, the residents, have not had a chance to know more about it. You know, we need to get videos out. We need to get something to explain to them, although it's a bit too late, isn't it, if we're going to send that in tomorrow to government, an expression of interest.
Can I ask you to sum up now, please, Councillor Dunbar?
Yeah, so I am very cynical, and because I haven't got enough facts, I don't know enough, I cannot vote for this.
Okay. Councillor James Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Very interesting discussion tonight, and really good to hear a good debate around this. My fundamental position is that I agree with Adam Brown. The reality is this will be thrust upon us regardless. If government want to do it, it will happen. I remember when discussions were taking place around unitary at Northampton Borough Council, we were adamant about having a Northampton unitary, and in fact, I believe that one of the Labour MP, or prospective Labour candidates, ran a campaign around that, in fact, becoming a Northampton unitary. Such was the consensus around it. We even had a paper commissioned on it. I think Deloitte did a paper on, actually looking at Northampton unitary, and we really explored the option really well. But in the end, the reality was the Max Callow report was commissioned by the government, and that was what was decided. And despite what we all wanted, and I don't think there was anyone who actually particularly wanted the model that we've got, we ended up with it. So I think the reality is that we will end up with whatever government wants to do, and that's nothing to do with being a Labour government or a Conservative government. It's just the reality of where we are. So I agree with Adam that we need to be on the front foot and be a part of it, and making sure that we shape the decisions that are made. My arguments, my concerns would be, obviously we had the Shadow Authority, which was the year running up to when West Northampton was formed. That was a very small select group of people. When Wendy Randall makes the point that she wants the opposition to be involved, well, it's not just opposition as well who want to be involved, there's also backbench councillors from the actual ruling parties as well need to be involved in this. We also need to see input from our residents as well. I agree, like Sam Rumans made the point, it's all about how you frame it. We need to frame the pros and cons. We need to make sure that we get real and true consultation and feedback from them as well, because ultimately they're the people who will be paying the price with regards to costs and precepts and that sort of thing. So tonight I will be recommending that we do support an interest, do support our interest in it, but I have massive reservations, and I want to make sure that we have our finger on the pulse as to how this moves forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Rosie Humphreys.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the report, I'm not confident we're even going to have any control in running a consultation, because it says if the Council joins the Devolution Priority Programme, which is, I think, what is being proposed, MHCLG will hold a centrally run public consultation between this month and March, and all we can ensure for our residents is input, which could cover a multitude of nothing very much, quite frankly. So it looks like we even don't have control of a consultation we might run, unless I'm much mistaken. Devolution's being imposed on us, and the advantages of signing up are unclear, it seems to me, and what's more certain is the disadvantages of not signing up. Councillor Larratt's confident we have found our niche in the South Midlands, but what Luton and Milton Keynes have indicated very recently is they have a very different view. I did wonder if any consideration's been given to looking west. For example, South Oxfordshire, we share a lot of the same strengths in, say, automotive and motorsports industries, and we're in the same transport body, the England's economic heartland, and many of our residents in Brackley and South Northants look to Oxfordshire as their sort of common counties. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no other speakers, I will now ask Councillor Matt Golby, who reserved his right to speak, whether he'd like to speak. Councillor Matt Golby.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And very interesting debate and very interesting comments, but I'm going to speak very positively about the opportunity that we're presented with. When I'm asked to consider something of quite a strategic nature, I've been around things like the Health and Wellbeing Board for quite a long time now. My first question is, well, what does this mean for the residents that I'm elected to represent? And I think that question can be slightly nuanced given the extra strategic nature of what we're being asked here. And I would put it that what would our residents expect of us? We're elected leaders of our communities, representatives of our communities, and I think Councillor Ruman's got there at the end of his speech to say, well, are we just going to sit here, say we don't know enough, let's just leave it? And then, you know, a few years will pass, other areas will benefit from being early adopters, reap the rewards of any monies, and all the other things that we can hopefully leverage in if we take up this opportunity. So I think we've got to look and stand up as locally elected leaders, take some responsibility, see this as a huge opportunity, I think. Discount, obviously we need to consider, but discount a lot of those negatives for now and go with this and run with this. We've talked about speed. This has come out very quickly, yes. But often in local government, we criticise central government for acting so slowly. This is something that has come along relatively quickly. If many of us are involved in business you make a decision, you get on with it. This is an opportunity. If we embrace it, we get on with it and we run with it and we make it work for us. So I think there's a fantastic opportunity. And going back to Councillor Larratt's point that has already been made around the East Midlands region, I've had experience of attending East Midlands regional meetings. It's all about Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire and Leicestershire, and I've always often felt the poor relation at those meetings. We've got as has been mentioned, West Northamptonshire is the bigger mass of population. We will be in the driving seat of this. We've talked about why the other areas might not want to work with us. Well, we've already taken on things like the function of the LEP, and we're making that work, and that's credit to the foresight and the leadership of West Northants Council. So overall, I think there's a huge amount of opportunity that we can leverage in here through things like economic growth, transport and infrastructure, housing, how we can control that and work with our partners, and skills and education, working on some of the fantastic things that we've got here. So let's not look at this as the glass half full and find all of those negatives, all those reasons why we can't move forward with something. Let's act as leaders, those leaders that we're elected to be, embrace this and make the most out of it for the residents that we represent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. I will now invite Councillor Adam Brown to respond to the debate on the proposal.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll try and go through as many answers to questions and points as possible. I'll group them together by political group. I think Councillor Harris's objections were mostly political in nature. He clearly doesn't like the policy in and of itself, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's an entirely respectable position to take. However, as an administration, as a leader, I have to adapt to the choices put to me by government, and that's the choice that I put to Council this evening. There's an opportunity in front of us, as I laid out in my opening statement, and it's up to Council whether we embrace that opportunity or not. he went on to make a further point about, is this going to be a figurehead telling us what to do? I mean, to a certain extent, in as far as any leader is a figurehead telling people what to do, then yeah, you know, they may be, but only within the defined remit of the powers that the combined authority will have, and those powers will be checked and balanced by the democratic structure around them. Councillor Beersworth commented about why we need to go into this so quickly. We need to sort social care. Well, the deadline is the deadline, unfortunately, and we know very well what the benefits are of being early adopters. I've set those out. Social care is an entirely separate issue. That is local government in and of itself. It's not regional government. We can park that one just for the moment. Of course, in our day-to-day business, it is the highest priority. Councillor Meredith, I was somewhat disappointed by the suggestion that we should, not support this merely because it's come from a government other than one of our own colour. We judge these policies on their merits, and when there's something in it for our residents, it's my obligation, and indeed our obligation, to look at the suggestion on the table and deliver on behalf of residents, not based on our party politics. And I think we should all be mature in that regard. There were questions raised about the consultation. Yes, it is a government-led consultation. I said that at the outset. We can't change that. We'll make sure that that consultation is as widely trailed as possible, using all available local media outlets. And Councillor Humphreys went on to make comments about Oxfordshire. I think Councillor Al-Wahabi mentioned several other potential geographies. When we submitted our expression of interest back in the summer in a combined authority in a more general sense, we did sound out the neighbouring authorities to see where they were. Now, either they had other priorities, or in the case of Oxfordshire in particular, the fact that they're in a two-tier structure at the moment makes this an extremely difficult relationship to enter into. South Midlands is a collection of unitary authorities. Yes, there are complexities around police and fire and certain other services, but I don't believe that it's beyond the wit of anybody to sort those out further down the line. And we know that there will be bespoke devolution programmes for each strategic authority. Not everything is going to arrive all at once, so it may be that current structures around those services in the South Midlands would persist for longer than in other areas where a coming together of those services is more feasible. Councillor Randall is absolutely right that this would present significant work for the administration. I don't know whether it's good news or bad news. It depends which side of the aisle you sit on. It's not likely to be this current administration. It's going to be the administration post-May. But between now and then, I will absolutely undertake to make sure that representatives of all groups are sat around the table being updated, because this is going to transcend political divides, and we need to make sure that A, we can influence the government's consultation sufficiently so that we're asking our residents the right questions, and then as we move further through the processes that we're setting forward residents' priorities. I think others did set out a few concerns about the democratic nature of the engagement. There was a comment around, are we just making decisions for our residents? I appreciate that Liberal Democrats in particular have a more inclined to more direct forms of democracy. However, I view taking decisions on behalf of residents as very much the job of a local councillor. Rather more Burkean in my outlook. I think we're here to take decisions in the interests of residents, not always to reflect the last opinion that we heard, but to take decisions based on the interests of the whole of West Northamptonshire, and that's what I'm trying to lead forward tonight. Councillor Pearce is quite right about the geographical issues that we face, but any geography that we in Northamptonshire enter into is going to be challenging. Our position in the country, the fact that we're on a sort of 45-degree axis, it just makes life difficult. We can link into the West Midlands because our railways go up towards Birmingham. We can arguably link up to the East Midlands to a small extent, although I see that as a very difficult relationship, given that I've yet to meet anyone in Northamptonshire that really looks towards Nottingham and Derby as a hinterland. But I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Larratt that we have found our niche in the South Midlands because of all the commonalities that I set out at the start. Councillor McCord, entertaining as ever. I'm not going to go over the critique of unitary because that's not what's being discussed here tonight. There's currently no suggestion that there's going to be a reorganisation in Bedfordshire, although I think it would be logical that there were. They have very small unitary authorities there, and it's going to be important that we push for an equitable form of representation around any mayor, so that the fact that someone in West Northamptonshire, West Northamptonshire is 400,000, Luton's about half that. We cannot tolerate a Lutonian effectively being valued at twice that of someone from West Northamptonshire. So that's a case we'll have to make very forcefully moving forward. Finally, just sorry, I've got three more comments, so three more people to respond to. Councillor Ruman's laid out the importance of a proper consultation. Absolutely agree. The way that you explain this change is absolutely critical. He's right on that front. I do quite agree with Councillor Shepherd about the speed at which we're being asked to do this. I would love to be able to take more time, but that's not. We don't have the luxury of time on this. And he asked about the difference between the mayoral strategic authority and the mayor. I would point him towards areas like Greater Manchester, the West Midlands, and so on and so forth. The decision-making is around the strategic authority. By and large, they will delegate powers thereafter to the mayor to take forward. The mayor will draw propositions around strategies and so on and so forth. Councillor Lowett and Barter set out a very eloquent summary of the benefits. So, finally, to round things up, I think we've heard a massive amount about the benefits of what's on the table, and there are significant benefits. I quite understand some of the cynicism and the critique of what we're being asked to undertake. However, opportunities like this often only come around once. We know what's come forward from Milton Keynes and Luton yesterday. However, I think that's a fast-changing picture that is by no means set in stone. I've been receiving emails during this meeting that suggest that actually there's still some way to go before a final decision is made. So watch this space. The deadline's tomorrow. 16, 18 hours is a long time in politics, but let's give West Northamptonshire the very best opportunity to succeed in this brave new world of regional government. So please support the recommendations. Let's believe in our county and let's move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. We've had a long debate this evening. I think it's been a fair debate. We will now ask for a vote. If councillors could please vote for, against or abstain. The proposal is passed 45 for, 7 against, 4 abstentions. Thank you. Item 5, urgent business. There's no urgent business to consider. So I will thank members for coming this evening to this extraordinary meeting and making time to debate such an important subject, and remind all that the next meeting will take place on the 20th of February. Thank you.